Well, thank you for listening to Converge Radio today. It is, I just feel so lucky right now, friends. I'm about to interview someone I've respected their work for years and years on end. Um, and it's Dessa, who you've probably seen on stage, you've seen in videos, and you may have even read her work. We're going to be talking about all of that today. So Dessa, thank you for chatting with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
For sure, for sure. Hey, I want to start out, and I don't do this very often, but I want to start out this interview with an apology from over 15 years ago. Back in '04, you all had a show at the Triple Rock, and soon after you were playing some randoms coming home party that was on Colfax and Lake. And there was a coin flip for who actually ended up playing that show, and a punk band ended up playing it. That was my coming home from the Army party. Thank you for playing it, and I want to thank you specifically because when the coin toss didn't go Doomtree's way, everyone has told me that you were the most pragmatic and chill about it, so I really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, belatedly welcome home.
Oh, well, thanks. I've been doing okay. Just for listeners who are getting acquainted with you and your work, I want to talk a little bit about your career and what you've done. I mean, your album Badly Broken Code dropped in early 2010, but you were very much making music and doing stuff in that scene beforehand, right?
Yeah, I've been a part of the Doomtree crew that you mentioned, which was a very independent hip-hop collective based in kind of a garbagey house in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I'd been making music with those guys, but hadn't put out a full-length record until Doomtree Records released a Badly Broken Code. Yeah,
that's awesome. And that album, I've read your book, which or part of it, which is more prep than I think I've ever done for a music interview. Reading someone's book's amazing, by the way, before you do an interview. It's weird for getting, some sort of thing. But when that album dropped, I was so impressed because I'm a huge fan of Lauryn Hill and Beth Gibbons from Portishead. And I heard so many of those elements coming out, but also doing your own thing. And it was interesting because I love Badly Broken Code, and we got to hear so many of those original tracks. But then your 2011 album, Castor the Twin, took a lot of those and featured all new arrangements and really brought it to almost like an orchestral level. And I just really, really admired that.
Well, thanks. At the beginning of my career, I didn't want to do a lot of singing because I was so eager to prove that I could rap, and I didn't want to be misunderstood as the woman who was brought in to sing choruses. So by the time I put out Badly Broken Code, I had decided to do some more singing, and I liked mixing the two. So there's really fast rap verses, and there's some kind of big choral moments with a lot of layered harmonies, and I like both. Yeah, so I didn't feel as weird about trying to reconcile the fact that those were both appealing, musical expressions.
Well, and you are getting back into the orchestral thing now, or not back into it. That's a wrong way of saying it, but you're doing some really cool orchestral things. You've been recording with the Minnesota Orchestra recently, which seems really, really cool.
Yeah, that was one of the most ambitious performances or recording projects that I've been a part of. We performed 2 sold-out nights at Orchestra Hall in Minneapolis, joined on stage by a bunch of singers and the entire orchestra, and performed these completely new arrangements of songs. I worked with an arranger named Andy Thompson, and it's like you burn down the original version of the song and then rebuild something entirely new in its place. So you really do have this huge dynamic range of an orchestra, which can go from one person delicately plucking a harp like 75 musicians all playing at once, some blasting on tubas and like full string sections and a timpani and a drum kit. It's huge. It's a huge sound. So that was definitely a highlight of my year. We did that in March of this year, and it comes out in November. So we're gearing up for the release of that record. It's called Sound the Bells, recorded live at Orchestra Hall.
When you're putting together something orchestral like that, do you hear all the individual parts as you're prepping for that, or like there are some surprises as you're putting that together?
That's a good question. So,
thank you.
The arranger Andy Thompson does that. He's the guy I mentioned who I work with. So I'm not writing the parts, right? So I'm not writing the parts for like violins. He's listening to the original song and then designing something that can be played by the full orchestra.
Oh, that makes a ton of sense, and just sounds like a really, really fun collaboration to work on and just see come to life. Well,
yeah, it's fun. It's intense. It's a totally different world, I think, probably for both of us. Like it's not often that like a world-class orchestra and an indie rapper partner, and so I think we've both had fun. Like sort of visiting the other person's world, the other entity's world.
I love that. And there does seem to be something special in those Minneapolis-St. Paul waters that collaborations like that happen. So that's so cool. That's so cool. Well, I wanted to talk about this really quick, and we don't need to expound forever on it, but I'm really interested about your approach to being doing your solo work versus being in a collective, if there's anything in your own creative process that changes with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when I'm working as part of Doomtree or with any large group of musicians, I mean, you've got a different set of skill sets. You've also got a different set of tastes in all likelihood. So I think that it can sometimes make the writing process a little challenging, as you try to triangulate sounds that everyone is going to like. But it can also make the finished product more interesting because you've got like a varied set of interests from which everyone is making a contribution. So it's like it's a more unusual product very often than any one artist would have been able to design alone, because it depends on this kind of like varied combination of ingredients. But yeah, when I'm doing my own stuff, I mean, the good news is I get to make all my own decisions and I don't have to compromise. And the bad news is I've got only my ideas at my disposal, and that, they're necessarily in a narrower lane than if I had 18 musicians in the room, all with really different backgrounds.
So I wanted to play a track that really, and I'm sure this is for a lot of people, but right out the gate grabbed me off of Badly Broken Code. And I think about that song a lot when I think about just kind of you and your trajectories. So I'm thinking that we should kick it off with Dixon's Girl. Do you have anything you want to let the audience know about that song?
Yeah, this is one of the beats that I liked immediately that was made by a producer in the crew called M.K. Larada. And I wrote the lyrics actually about a true story, an encounter that I'd had with another woman while I was on tour in the South. I think that ought to do it. Yeah, this is Dixon's Girl.
That's cool. Well, we'll play that one and then the Chacon right after. Thanks for listening to Converge Radio.